Hey guys, it's my assistant Rudi and I again. My channel is named On the Pulse with Silky, and that's why I want to report about what is going on and I want to be on the pulse of things. And there is something going on in Texas, and a lot of newspapers, television stations, they're saying, will the US slide into the next civil war? Don't mess with Texas. They're blaming the Biden administration for the migrant crisis. So Texas says, we're fed up. We have so many illegals. Crime is through the roof. And it is a problem. And I would like to report about this without being political. Because, if you look at the North American or the US television, they're divided into two parties, right? One supports the Democrats and the other channels support the Republicans. So the truth maybe lies in the middle. Does it? I also, since I have a lot of viewers from all over the world, from Australia, from South Africa, and a lot of people from Europe, Europe has been dealing with a migrant crisis since 2015. And maybe, guys, if you're watching this, it would be nice to get your insight in the comments on how this has affected your country. We hear a lot, I'm sitting here in Canada, we hear a lot from Europe, if you don't watch the mainstream media, that there's a lot of problems, that a lot of countries have no-go zones like Sweden, even Germany right now. I recently had a friend visit me who says he's been attacked in Berlin. It was winter. He was wearing a hat that was sliding a little bit to the back of his head, and he was attacked by migrants who thought that he is Jewish. These are all stories. So what's behind this? I want to look at this, and I don't want to start a civil war on this channel, guys. I really want to have this like a productive discussion, especially if you're from the US and whether you're a Democrat or a Republican and whether you're pro or against it. I think the problem that we have right now all over the world, that we're fighting each other over opinions instead of really sit together and be a little bit more calm and talk about things and, to try to find a solution, maybe name the problems and also admit to the problems so that they can be solved and not pushing them in the back of everything. And since I have so many viewers from all over the world, I would like to give you the information that I have gathered that is beyond what the mainstream media is saying, because I'm watching a lot of European news and I'm watching a lot of German news, of course, because what is always interesting for me, and it has been for the last 15 years, I see what is reported in the US about something that happens in the US, for example, by the Democratic television stations, by the Republican television stations. And then I compare this with what's reported in Europe. And unfortunately, what I have figured out with the European news agencies, and same with the Canadians, what I'm missing a little bit is the going back to the roots of journalism and really investigate something before you report about it. Because what I see when I look at the German news, basically they copy one by one, sentence by sentence, what CNN is reporting. And it's the same in Canada. So, and again, whether you like CNN or you hate CNN, that's not my point. What I want to say is, if one television station influences most other news in other countries, how can we get to the bottom of this if they don't investigate themselves? And, let's put this aside from the television station. You know, something is happening somewhere, and there's one guy who tells you it's like this and this and this is happening, and it's this person's fault, and this is this like this. And then the whole world, or a large part of the world, just takes this as the word that is valid and starts reporting what this guy says. Because is that still journalism? You know, I would like the German media to put your guys on a plane and go there and watch what's happening and then report on it. And it doesn't matter what's the outcome. If it's then the same what CNN says or the same what Fox News says, you know, get to the root of the issue. And, you know, I've spent some time in Texas at a high school exchange in Austin. So Texas is very dear to me. And what's going on there, of course, this is of a lot of interest. So I want to look closer into this, but I don't want to start a war here on the channel and in the comments. So if we talk with each other, guys, let's really talk about the problem. And let's not make this political, although, of course, there are political forces fighting against each other in Texas. But really, let's sit back a little bit. And it's not about the US election. Let's think about what is happening there. Is there a problem? What is the problem? And what could be done to solve it? So let's have a look at the official website of Governor Greg Abbot first, what they have published there. They are calling their border protection efforts Operation Lone Star, like for the Lone Star State, Texas. So they are saying President Biden's reckless open border policies have created an ongoing crisis at our southern border as recorded levels of illegal immigrants and deadly drugs pour into Texas. Texas is taking historic action to respond to this border crisis. In 2021, Governor Greg Abbott launched Operation Lone Star, deploying the Texas National Guard and Texas Department of Public Safety to the southern border. Operation Lone Star personnel work around the clock to detect and repel illegal crossings, arrest human smugglers and cartel gang members, and stop the flow of deadly drugs like fentanyl into our nation. While the federal government ignores this crisis, Texas is holding the line. The state of Texas is working collaboratively with communities impacted by the border crisis to arrest and detain individuals coming into Texas illegally. Our efforts will only be effective if we work together to secure the border, make criminal arrests, protect landowners, rid our communities of dangerous drugs, and provide Texans with the support that they need and deserve. Okay, there's one thing that I want to say regarding crossing the U.S. border as a non-U.S. resident. So the Canadian border, if you want to cross by car into the U.S. as just a normal person who wants to go shopping there, just hop across the border for a day or something. Basically, everyone has to as register ahead of time online and has to fill out all the information, and then you drive towards the border and they ask you a lot of questions, and if you haven't, you have to go into the office, get out and get a visa that is usually valid for 90 days. Unless you're a Canadian citizen, then it's a little bit more difficult. But they ask a lot of questions and they're very thorough. And, you know, I remember when I was a kid and 9/11 happened, then after that, if you wanted to travel to the States, it was so tight. And even like, I remember that 10 years ago, I wanted to drive across the border from Canada to the US with a friend that was visiting, German passport, and she had been in Dubai for 5 days for vacation. I mean, the Europeans like to go there because there's nice hotels and it's usually not too expensive there to make a nice vacation. So she had that UAE stamp in her passport, and they interviewed her for a very, very long time, and they were very suspicious about that stamp and where she had come from. So the reason why I'm saying this, what I'm a little bit surprised of, the US is really, really tight with letting people in. I just recently saw a report of a German retired couple. They did rent an apartment in Las Vegas, and they just wanted to be there and basically spend their retirement pension and live in Las Vegas. And they overspent their visa, I think, for a week. And then they were basically sent out of the country with no permission to re-enter for the next 10 years. So it's very, very tight and very, very difficult. And it seems when you cross the border by car, they're very worried about smuggling and terrorism. I mean, I don't think terrorists cross the border by car at an official border crossing, but who knows, right? So it's very tight. There's a few years ago, there was a tourist in Canada, and at low tide in a city called White Rock that's basically at the US border, and the city of Blaine is on the, or the town of Blaine is on the other side, and she was at low tide walking on this in the sand. And if you don't know that there's a border, you don't see it. There is not a fence or anything. There's a road called Zero Avenue that separates Canada from the US, but there are no visible fences. And a lot of people that are new to Canada, they don't even realize that this is the border, but don't you dare step over the line. And she was walking, she was basically on ocean ground at low tide, and she wasn't aware that she was crossing a border, and she was detained out of the state of Washington. She was detained even further. I'll have to look up which state and where. I'll put it in the screen here. And they were holding her for quite a while, and asking her why she was crossing the border there. So as a neutral person, I'm not voting in the US, and I watch this. I'm just wondering, does it make sense to have then on the other side of the US parts of the border so open that basically everyone can come in with good and bad intentions? And does it make sense then to so tightly and thoroughly control your northern border if you don't do this at the southern border? For me, watching this from the outside, it doesn't make much sense to me, because I have looked at footage. It's a lot of young men. It's not only families and women. It's a lot of young men from all over the world, from Senegal, from Venezuela, from everywhere. And you might wonder, okay, if people seek asylum, why is it so many young men? And that's the same thing that is Europe facing. It's like a lot of young men. And I've wondered, doesn't anybody consider that something's off? This is just my observation. And again, guys, let's not make this political. It's just observing and talk about it. Because why don't these young men bring their parents, their sisters, or someone if they're politically endangered in their country and they need to seek asylum? So, of course, there's families. And the problem is, who wouldn't look for a better life? But on the one hand, to get a visa to live in the US as a European, for example, no matter what you are, if you're a doctor or construction guy or whatever, it is very, very hard to immigrate to the US. You can get an E2 visa, that's an immigrant investor visa that doesn't give you permanent residency, so you can only stay in there as long as you have that company and you work, and they go through your financials, and so you got to bring a lot of money. And if you want a permanent residency, I think now they increased it. You got to found a company or make an investment, I think, of about $1.8 million, or you invest in something called Regional Center, where they invest for you and they hold it for a certain period of time. If the investment goes wrong, then bad luck, you lost your money. And if it goes well, then you get your residency after a while. I believe it was 500,000. It could be that it was increased to 800,000. I'm not so aware of it because I need to win the lottery first to do that. So in light of that, I mean, I know a lot of Germans who would love to immigrate to the US, and so many of them just don't do it because they can't afford it. And to have a company offer you a job and sponsor you, that's expensive for the company, and it takes a long time. Even I think people that are married, if a German is married to an American, for example, it takes a lot of time to get a permanent residency. And even then, if they have, you can't bring your retired parents to live with you, even if they have enough money and they would like infuse the economy with money. So in light of that, I would love to hear, if someone's watching, if you have immigrated the completely legal way to the United States, do you feel that something is unfair the way things are happening right now? These are all things that I want to look into without taking a side. But I think it's important to look at all this because I have talked to a lot of people who feel that something is unfair. And I have to say, I have driven along the US-Canadian border quite a few times. And people that live on this border on Zero Avenue, they tell me, if my dog, and you see the road here, it's like forest on the other side. You can't really tell. And they tell me, if my dog runs away and runs into that forest on the other side, I can't even step in there like 10 feet to get the dog. I have to drive through the border crossing and then get the dog, which until then, who knows where the dog is, right? So there seem to be cameras and they catch the people that want to cross that border crossing. And then on the other hand, if you look what's going on on the southern border, and I also had a friend, and I want to tell you all these stories to look at things from different perspectives. So what they're fighting about in Texas is a piece of razor wire that the Texans have put up along a spot on the Rio Grande, on the river, because there was no fence and nothing. And they have put up razor wire to deter all the illegal people that wanted to come into the country from coming. And I know friends that live in the US, and they wanted to buy a horse farm in Texas. And they looked at certain areas, and they were looking at areas where there's not too many tornadoes, and just San Antonio was their preferred area, but they didn't want to get into the expensive areas, right? It's really crazy so they were looking a little bit further west of San Antonio. I think the town was called Hondo. I remember that. And they had a realtor who was advising them, and they said, well, this is way cheaper than, it was only an hour and a half from San Antonio, I believe, or not even that. So they liked that property, like acreage property where they could keep the horses. But the realtor told them, do not go into that area. So don't buy property in that area, because all the illegals are running through your property. Then they're knocking at your door, and some of them are violent, and this causes problems. So I'm just wondering, is this the goal? And how long should this continue? Because I think the American dream is still manifested in people's heads all around the world. And if they could, they would all love to live in the United States. But the thing is, let's say a European guy from Austria to Switzerland, Germany wants to immigrate illegally to the US. You'd have to throw away your passport and come through the border. But I think they would find out pretty quickly who you are and then just send you back, versus a lot of people that are not sent back. So these are stories I heard from a lot of people, and it sounds chaotic, guys. I have to say that. And I would really like to discuss this with you in the comments. So Governor Greg Abbot has said Texas is not giving up. Texas will defend itself. And I remember when I was in Texas, it was always don't mess with Texas, right? So what is the solution? So yeah, guys, the solution is what I want to talk about in my next videos. I want to make this a series about the Texas border crisis and what's going on. So stay tuned with me. This is it for today. My battery died while I was filming and now it's already dark. So maybe it's time to end this one here, part 1. Let me know if you like stuff like that. I think it is a very important topic that is crucial to the US to see what is going to happen further with the immigration to the country. Is it out of control? Can it be controlled in the near future? I think everyone comes to the agreement that as it is going right now is probably not the right solution. We will talk about this more in the next few parts because New York is having major problems with the immigrants. I'm having problem to call it immigrant because the word immigration for me is the legal process. So New York is crowded. They don't know where to put people. Many sleep on the streets. They close schools, so kids can't go to school because they're putting the migrants in there. So people are protesting on the streets in New York. If you live in New York, let me know. Does this affect you? What is going on? And guys, I hope we will have a nice discussion without fighting each other in the comments. I'm looking forward to read your comments and to see what's going on. And guys, thank you so much for supporting my channel and for sending me the supers, for buying me coffees on buymeacoffee.com. I'm really, really grateful for that. And stay tuned. Part 2 is coming out tomorrow. And of course, I'll keep you updated about what's happening with the volcanic eruptions in Iceland as well. And there's another Campi Flegrei update coming soon too. In the meantime, check out the 2 videos in the end screen. And yeah, guys, good morning wherever you are. I know a lot of people watching my videos in the morning, and that's why I don't want to make this too long, because I don't want to make a 1-hour video and then you said that your breakfast will last an hour. So 20 minutes I think is the goal, and I'll work on part 2 tomorrow. Thank you so much, guys. I hope to see you very, very soon. Bye bye.